What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1537 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta, that's why Peter's here. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city, outside the dome. With 8 championships since 1967, we're going for 9. We made the playoffs. It's coming. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mic'd is FOTM Hall of Famer, Peter Gross. Welcome back, Peter.
Well, you put about 4 S's on the end of that, didn't you?
I let that ride, buddy. Let it ride. Peter, when you introduce yourself to people you're meeting for the first time at Woodbine or wherever you are, do you say, "Hello, I'm FOTM Hall of Famer, Peter Gross"?
No.
All right, I didn't think so, but I thought I'd check in. How are you? Like, give me an update on your health, your well-being. How is Peter Gross?
Oh, I'm reasonably good. I have had a throat issue for about 2 months. Had to go see doctors, had chest x-rays.
What did they say?
They said there's nothing there. There's no problem.
The problem's between your ears.
Yeah, they gave me some puffers and some steroid crap, and I sound a little bit crusty in the throat, but that's...
Well, I listened to every episode of Down the Stretch, and we'll talk more about horse racing, because I got to ask you about the King's Plate and the rain out and what's happening. I got all those questions in storage for you. But when I listened to Down the Stretch, I didn't even notice. It's only when you pointed it out that I can now hear it.
Well, hang on a second. See, now I've caught you in a lie, because you say you listened to every episode.
I didn't say that. Well, why? You're going to say you referenced...
About 4 episodes ago, I was unable to speak, so I parceled out all of the elements to various people. I had my mother doing a segment. I had my grandson doing a segment.
But did you do the intro?
Well, if you listen to it, I'm trying to do the intro, and then I fell apart.
How is your mother?
My mother's sensational.
And she's 100 years young, right?
No, she's 101.
Oh my God!
Seeing her tonight, actually.
Okay, so and she still lives independently.
Completely independent. Nothing wrong with her.
That's amazing. Your mom could live forever.
Yeah.
Is that the goal?
I'll tell you that on Facebook or X or whatever it's called.
Well, they're two different things.
She's an absolute icon in the extended family.
Okay, Facebook probably.
Yeah.
I'm thinking for that. Now, your mom though, how is her happiness quotient? Like, is she happy?
She's an incredibly well-adjusted, very happy person with a great sense of humor, and she's embarking on a new career. There's a gentleman named Ethan Cole who's producing a documentary using my mother to illustrate the waste of time that people spend on their cell phones and their apparatus. And there's a video of my mother doing sit-ups.
At 101 years old.
At 101, yeah.
And so this is when could I see this footage? Like, is this
I can't help you with that.
Okay, but that's amazing that your mom's part of that and that she's 101. She's doing great. This is a good indicator that you'll be on Toronto Mic'd in 30 years.
That's the plan. What time? Because I may be booked.
So many places I want. This is going to be one of those all killer, no filler. We're going to go over the place. But now that we got an update on your health, you sound like you got a little scratchy throat thing going on there. Your mom's doing better than you are. She's doing great. I will tell you, I had a phone call with Jennifer Valentine last week, like a very lengthy, detailed phone conversation with Jennifer Valentine. Did you know her as Jennifer Peck or Jennifer Valentine or both?
I guess both.
Both. Okay. She was telling me a story about, and I've heard this from many other people, and we talked about it your first visit here, but she had a substitute teacher named Mr. Gross who looked like you.
My older brother, Dan, was a substitute teacher, and the poor guy, he hated it when people would say, "Are you Peter Gross's brother?" Sometimes he'd deny it.
That's difficult to do, right? Because I never had the pleasure of meeting Dan, but sounded like you maybe, or looked like you, or both.
Dan was, I suppose he probably looked a bit like me. He had a full beard, he never shaved, long hair, full beard. Very different from me, quite frankly.
Okay, but you couldn't pull one past young Jennifer Peck. She said this is a Peter Gross relation. So, and Dan passed away, right?
9-10 years ago, yeah.
9-10 years ago. Okay, can you give me, so how many siblings are still with us in the
I had 4. I've lost 2 of my brothers. I'm sorry. I was
you were one of 4.
I was one of 4. I lost 2.
Okay, so who else is with you? You have a brother that's still with you?
My youngest brother, John, who is the brightest of the family, doing very well. He runs the True North rock climbing club at the Downsview Airport.
Amazing. You know, there's a Jonathan Gross who's an FOTM, but this is obviously a different Jonathan Gross. The other Jonathan Gross, it's hard to say that, Jonathan Gross. He helped co-write with his sister Marjorie Gross, who passed away far too young as well. The episode Fusilli Jerry episode of Seinfeld with the fusilli. Remember the pasta?
Vaguely
remember that.
It's funny. I've seen most Seinfelds, but
okay, it's a very memorable episode, Fusilli Jerry, and Jonathan Gross had a role in that with his sister Marjorie.
Jonathan Gross was part of the Battered Newsmen.
Yes.
Which was a silly story I did in 1977 for City Pulse.
Okay, give me a little more. Like what was give us a little vibe on
they had a rock group, a terrible rock
group. A punk group? Is it?
Yeah. The Battered Newsmen, and
like the Battered Wives.
Whatever the circumstances were, off I went to document them. And then I ended up performing with them very badly.
That's funny. I'm going to play a little something of you from back in the day from a FOTM who runs a wonderful Twitter account called Dave Stieb Today in History. I got it documented here, the exact handle, but it's about Dave Stieb, This Day in History. I'm going to do something I've never done on Toronto Mike, and I'm going to do it with you. My question for you, Peter, is I know you're in your early 70s. Don't kick the camera. How is it that you don't wear glasses? Have you had LASIK or something? Do you just have perfect vision? Why is it I look at you and you're never wearing glasses?
The last time I had my eyes checked, vintage 2 years ago, they told me I didn't need glasses. It's as simple as that.
So let me ask you, when you're looking at your phone or you're on your, laptop or desktop or whatever's going on there in the Gross household, your iMac or whatever, you don't have any issues with seeing a 6 versus a 5 and everything's crisp?
I probably do.
Okay. Well, where I'm going with this is that when I left the corporate world, I drained my, what do you have that? You have a chunk of money for stuff that OHIP does not cover. Okay. So I had to drain this before I left because you can't take it with you. So I said, okay, I'm going to get my prescription for my eyeglasses done. I'm going to get my eyeglasses. I'm going to get my sunglasses. I'm going to get it all done because it's now or never. I'm leaving my corporate job. And I never needed these glasses. They literally never go on my head. But I'm going to make, this is the debut. So Peter, are you excited? I wanted to do this with you. You're an FOTM Hall of Famer. For the first time in Toronto Mike's history, I'm going to record this episode of you wearing my glasses because I find since I turned 50, I really need to see the crispness of the characters on my computer screen, of course, so I don't make mistakes. And the best way is to wear glasses. So are you ready? I'm going to put on my glasses. You're going to tell me how I look.
40 years from now, people will remember where they were.
August 19th, 2024. It's happening now. Okay, so Peter, episode 1537, okay? So I got a nice case. And again, I haven't had a corporate job since 2018. So we're actually 6 years since I got these. And for the first time, I'm going to wear them. Because since I turned 50, I've been wearing them more only when I'm on the computer. I'm fine otherwise, but I need them for doing computer work. And I need computer work. I have notes and stuff. So you see this? You're going to tell me I want a full review, okay? Ready? Going on my head. Now seriously, Peter, by the way, you look amazing. I didn't stop kicking my camera. This is important, Peter. How do I look?
it's neat. It's cool.
Okay,
You look
thank you.
great. You look
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. Okay, Peter Gross gives me a thumbs up. So I have a live stream going, live.torontomike.com. So if anyone is there, let me know how I look. I'm going to wear glasses, and I might have to start wearing glasses for all recordings because I'm often looking at my notes, etc. And I thought I'd debut it with you because I'm so comfortable with you.
And it's interesting. It's a completely different look. Like Clark Kent, you could never tell he was Superman because of the glasses.
Do I look smarter? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
Okay.
you do look smarter.
Did you ever meet Phil Donahue?
I did not, and now I guess I never will.
Now, so you've heard that news. It's kind of breaking news. But I think of 80s icons, and many of them are actually starting to pass away here. And Phil Donahue is one of those guys, but Peter Gross is another one of those guys. And again, I'm going to play a clip in a minute here. But did you ever tune in? I just remember as a young man, a very young man, watching him on TV, and he'd like kind of go, "Caller, are you there, caller?" And then there'd be this voice from the heavens or whatever. And I remember him with his glasses. He had iconic glasses. But Phil Donahue seemed to be a fixture of 80s daytime television. And now he's passed away. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Any thoughts on Phil Donahue?
No, I'm really not. Except that he was married to Marlo Thomas,
Right.
who in the 60s and 70s was quite
That girl, right?
attractive woman, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And Marlo Thomas, do you know her dad by any chance?
Danny Thomas.
Yeah.
Every once in a there's some channel that still runs the Danny Thomas shows, and they weren't too bad.
No, that was a good sitcom for the time. But that one never made it to like syndication when I was watching. So like where I grew up watching a lot of like Leave It to Beaver. What's the I Dream of Jeannie. Like there's certain shows, of course, Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island, certain shows I watched a lot of because that's what they played. But that show, a Danny Thomas show, I don't think it was airing on anything syndicated that I would have tuned into. I completely missed it.
The Dick Van Dyke Show from the 60s was the brightest, was the funniest.
And much like your mother, he's going to live forever.
Yeah, he's still around.
He's still around. Okay, a lot of ground I want to cover, but in the last couple of episodes, we've been kind of discussing your insurance issue. I won't recap it all. Like if you go back and listen to Peter Gross episodes, we go into great detail, except just the highlight is basically that you were unable to get insurance so that you could deliver food for the food delivery services, and that's how you were supplementing your income. Can you give us an update? Because you filed a lawsuit, we played the clips, you were misled. At some point, you and I ended up in trouble with the courts because I aired your appearance in court, and we got in big trouble, and you had to appear before the judge. Can you put a bow on that, though? You got a letter from the judge that says basically we're not in trouble anymore. Is that correct?
No, I didn't get a letter from the judge, but I got an email instructing me to appear before the judge.
Yeah. We covered that one.
And the judge scared me by saying, what you did is punishable by $10,000 or 6 months in jail.
Which is worse? Like, what would you take? I would take the 6 months.
I take this because I don't have the 10,000. But she let me off with a warning.
Okay. But you got that in writing, right? That we've been told just don't do it anymore and we're okay.
There might have been.
I think so, because you said you got a letter.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. What's the update on your insurance so that you can deliver food?
In that settlement discussion that we recorded and wrongly aired, the arbiter or the judge in that strongly suggested that I get a lawyer. So I got a lawyer, and I gave him a retainer, which was a lot of money for me. And for 2 or 3 days, he seemed very active on it. He was calling me, and now about 2 months has gone by, and I'm hearing nothing. So.
I don't like this. I feel like because when Mike Stafford came on the program, do you know Mike Stafford? Like,
yeah.
You know of him?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So he had no money and he wanted to file a suit against Chorus, and your former colleague, Lauren Honigman, actually got a lawyer friend of his to do it on, what's it called when you take a cut from the back end, like no upfront money. So so
pro grata.
Yeah, well, there's a term for this. It'll come to me. Like work on
pro bono. Pro bono
it starts with C, I think, but it'll come to me. But you didn't pursue that. You didn't. Maybe Lauren or somebody else had a friend who would take your case, and then instead of charging you money up front, would take a percentage of whatever you got.
I had a number of discussions with Lauren, and what he emphasized is that the insurance companies have all the leverage. That trying to beat an insurance company is a real bang your head against the wall effort. So I decided I should get a lawyer. And when I spoke to this guy at first, he seemed very comfortable with this issue of suing insurance companies, seemed to be up to speed. And the last time I spoke to him, he just said, look, we're dealing with two different courts on this. They're not speaking to each other. So nothing's happening.
I don't like that. Okay, so we'll get you back for another update soon, but I don't like how quiet that's got. I don't like how much, I don't know the number. You haven't told me the number, but if you consider it a significant amount of money he took up front from a guy who, you admitted you don't have a pool of disposable income from which to draw.
Well, the other benefit is that before I gave the money to the lawyer, I was agonizing over this several hours a day. And now I've just sort of left it in someone else's lap. So I'm just waiting.
So you paid for some peace of mind here.
Yeah, I got something.
You got Okay. So obviously we're going to get a thorough King's Plate update from you. I listened to almost all of Down the Stretch. I might have missed a bit of one episode there. I apologize. It's called Dave Stieb Today. When I get to that, Blake Bell is the gentleman who runs Dave Stieb Today on Twitter. And he's an FOTM because when I was at Christie Pitts, he dropped by. Since I said the words Christie Pitts, Peter Gross, there's a book there for you, The History of Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball. Did you ever do like a World According to Gross or a live hit for CityTV from Christie Pitts during a Toronto Maple Leafs baseball game?
Probably not. I know that I probably did some stories on it. Never a live hit, though.
No, not during. Okay, because it's not too late. Okay, so that book will give you the full ongoing history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. I don't know if you're in there. I didn't check the index. You might have been in there. Now, they're in the playoffs. I think they wrapped up the regular season yesterday, so I'll be providing great detailed info for listeners of Toronto Mike about the Toronto Maple Leafs playoff run, which begins now. It wasn't a great regular season, but again, you just got to make the playoffs and then put it together. So it's all happening now. It's, again, best value in the city because no ticket required. You don't got to buy a ticket. You show up at Christie Pitts for these games, and you get a spot on the hill, or you can bring a chair and put it on the field somewhere. Not on the field. Maybe don't put it in like deep left center field or something. But you can watch the game, get a hot dog, and enjoy a fresh Leafs lager. It's the best value in town, Peter.
Geographically, it's a remarkable place because you got the hills, and then at the bottom of the hill is the diamond. It's a comfortable place to watch.
You know what they say? It's the ninth wonder of the world. It's a geographical marvel. Fill the hill, Christie Pitts. We love our Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. I mentioned the Leafs lager. Peter, you're clean. Like you do not drink an ounce of alcohol.
No.
Okay. That's why I'm not giving you any fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery. Delicious fresh craft beer. That's what we drink around here. We love the support. I urge people to subscribe to Between Two Fermenters, which is the Great Lakes Brewery podcast. If they knew what they were doing, they'd make sure. I know. Why have Peter Gross as a guest? He's not going to drink the fresh craft beer during the episode. But listen to Between Two Fermenters and listen to Life's Undertaking. I had a great episode last week with Brad Jones, who's the funeral director at Ridley Funeral Home. Life's Undertaking. He's at a place called Honey Harbor, which sounds like heaven. And he was checking in, and it was a great conversation. He's just such a fascinating guy. He owns Ridley Funeral Home. And Peter, the way you're going, you're never going to end up at Ridley Funeral Home.
Well, keep a good thought.
I'm going to put it out. My over-under on that is like from today, 45 years. I think that you're going to live a very long time.
That would make me almost 120.
Yeah, and then, sadly, your mom will have to attend your funeral.
Maybe so, yeah.
Okay, lots going on here. You are here for the Palma Pasta, and yes, there is a large meat lasagna in my freezer for you. Garnet Barnsdale, if you're listening, would you please fast forward 2 minutes? I don't want you to hear the next 2 minutes. So Garnet Barnsdale, fast forward 2 minutes. Peter, what are your thoughts on Palma Pasta lasagna?
Well, I had no desire to be on your show today. I have no interest in talking to you or discussing this issue, but I knew that I was going to get this frozen meat lasagna, and it's fantastic. And the reference to Garnet Barnsdale, of course, is he makes a very good lasagna. He puts little meatballs in it. So as you're eating the lasagna, you get this surprise. But the Palma lasagna is the best lasagna I've ever eaten. It's really a thrill. And I'll take this home, and Roger and I will get 3 meals out of this.
Yeah. And scene. Perfect. Well done, Peter. Here's your money. Okay, but no, that was all authentic, and just like the Italian food is authentic from Palma Pasta. All right, Peter Gross, before I play a little song to get us set up for the King's Plate update, and then we're going to try something new that I'm going to use with Leona Boyd. It's like a word association game where I'm going to say the name of somebody, and you're just going to, without even, you're not going to stop and ponder from your heart, from the top of your big brain. You're going to tell us your thoughts, your feelings, your memories quickly of the name that I've uttered. This is coming soon. I'm very, very excited about that. That's right after our King's Plate update. But may I just tell you about my night last night, Peter Gross?
I think you should.
Okay, so last night I was at a concert at Budweiser Stage. It was it was DJ Jazzy Jeff, Paula Abdul, and New Kids on the Block. Are you familiar with any of these three acts or all of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not, I never in my life, and I will tell you, Peter, you spent many years at All News Radio 680. Many years. How many years were you at 680?
24.
24 years. Okay. Shout out to Mike Eppel. Shout out to Richard Southern. I often, when I bike with pants on, I'll use my 680 News tie on my leg. They got new branding now, so they had to get rid of all the old green stuff. There's no more green at 680 News. But before 680 went, by the way, Mike Eppel's listening right now. Anything you want to say to Mike?
Mike Apple's your biggest fan.
I thought you were my biggest fan.
No, Mike Apple cares for you way more than I do.
I got a great note from Mike Apple yesterday about how he says he could listen, and I hope I'm allowed to say this, Mike, but this was a comment. He could listen to me talk to Ed Keenan forever. So I'm going to call his bluff. My next Ed Keenan episode is going to go like 12 hours. We'll see if Mike Apple's still in.
Apple listens to all of your podcasts. I can't listen to my own podcast. I just got this tiny span of attention.
Yeah, well, listen, you were there. Like you want fresh content. But Apple does love Toronto Mike. He's listening right now. So before 680 went all news, I was an avid listener of the all hits 680. So I'm thinking now, in age-wise, like it's from the time I'm, 8, 9 years old, and I start kind of listening to more radio until basically pretty much until it goes all news. I'm tuning into 680 for the top 6 at 6. I was very interested in top 40. Like I'm no longer, I've lost touch with top 40, but I was very keen on all hit radio, top 40 music. So I heard a lot of Paula Abdul and New Kids on the Block. And when you hear these pop songs over and over again on, the old top 40 where they repeated quite often, you just knew these songs and you could sing along. You knew the words. So I am here to tell you, Peter, that I know, like from my heart, an almost embarrassing number of New Kids on the Block songs. Can you name any? Can you sing any New Kids on the Block song for me?
I'm trying hard. I'm digging deep into my memory, and the answer is no.
Because you were not listening to, in the late 80s into the early 90s, you were not listening to top 40 radio.
No,
that'll explain it. Okay, so I did never once though did I ever thought like I want to see New Kids on the Block in concert. Like I just don't go to pop acts. I never buy a ticket for a pop act. It's just not my bag or whatever. But unbeknownst to me, Monica got some deal through her work, and she bought 2 tickets, and then she nicely asked me to be her +1. So I was excited to go to these top 40 acts from the 80s and 90s. With Monica. So we take the GO train, we get off at Exhibition, we walk through the X, and then we were there and I was there for the entire Paula Abdul set, the entire New Kids on the Block set. Fantastic, like fun night, but the ratio of women to men at this concert, I was trying to gauge it. I'm going to put it at 25-1.
Really?
25 women for every man I saw at Budweiser Stage last night. Unbelievable. What's your reaction? You wish you were there?
Yes, I do.
The funny thing is, so the men's washroom lines are, you just walk in, it's easy peasy, but the women washroom lines are extensive. So obviously what happened was women just started going in the men's room. So the men's room became like a non-gender specific unit, whatever. Anybody can go into that man's room, and that's what it was like. So I went in to take a leak. The urinals are men only. The stalls were basically women. It was just, that's what happened there. But it was quite something. This is a huge, what I saw was, just to share my experience, I saw Monica was actually a bit young for this crowd because Monica's birthday is tomorrow. She turns 43, so happy birthday, Monica. Monica was too young for this crowd. But this was basically, it looked to me like the average, a lot of 50-something-year-old women who were in love with New Kids on the Block in 1988, who were kind of dressing up like that era, going with a bunch of girlfriends, and they're at this concert, and they're teenagers or preteens again. Like, it was a miracle, all these 50-something-year-olds who just we're singing along, and Mark, I almost called him Mark Wahlberg because I watched Boogie Nights last year. Coincidentally, I watched Boogie Nights again yesterday. But Donnie Wahlberg will he lifts up his shirt and he shows his six pack, and these girls are creaming their jeans, and this crowd is going nuts. It was something, man. I paused for Peter Gross reaction.
The only thing I can think of in terms of going to watch a group sing something familiar to you, I went to see the Beatles at Maple Leaf Gardens in 1964.
Wow.
And the group what do you call the group that before the main group?
Opening act.
The opening act was The Circle. And they had a hit song called Red Rubber Ball. And no one was going crazy for The Circle, so you could actually hear the rendition. And I remember thinking it was the first time in my life I'd seen a live rendition of a song that I'd heard on the radio.
Wow.
And that was 1964. That was only 60 years ago.
Right.
I still remember that. I can't remember a note of the Beatles because everyone was screaming.
And that sound system was shit, of course, at the Maple Leaf Gardens, right? And is that when they did the 2 shows in one day? Because was that when Ballard pulled a fast one or something, and they had to do 2 shows in one day?
Yeah, they did. And the shows were 24 minutes long, not like Taylor Swift's 4.5-hour show these days.
Okay, so what was the ratio of women to men that day? Do you remember?
It wasn't
25 to 1.
13 to 7.
13 to 7, okay.
I calculated it.
By the way, remember, speaking of what's the name for this word, remember that C word for lawyers? Thank you to Hey Ref. It's contingency fee. So you need a lawyer on contingent. They're hard to find, I guess, but sometimes if you know somebody, or if you're Mike Stafford. A little music here, because I want to ask you about the King's Plate.
Didn't it rain, children? Rain, oh yes. Didn't it? Yes, didn't it? You know it did, didn't it? Oh, yes, how it rained. I said it rained.
Woo! This is Sister Rosetta Thorpe?
Thorpe.
You saw her in concert too, right?
No, this is a remarkable piece of video that you can find on YouTube from 1963 or 64. And she's making the song up as she goes along.
Really?
She's doing it on a train, I don't know where, a train platform, I believe maybe somewhere in England. And this was a middle-aged, rather large black woman. She's a remarkable guitar player. If she did her act today, she'd be a gigantic star. And the reason you're running this is that late Saturday afternoon, as I was preparing to insert the King's Plate into my podcast, which was otherwise completed, so I had a 5-minute gap to put in the King's Plate.
And this podcast is called Down the Stretch.
Down the Stretch.
And anybody right now who has any degree of interest in horse racing in Ontario should subscribe immediately. Free subscription, and it's very thorough. As Freddie P will tell you, as Mike Wilner will tell you, as Jason Portwander will tell you, nobody puts content together like Peter Gross.
Well, thank you for that. But I had to, I was planning to put, I had a 5-minute gap of my podcast to put in the King's Plate. And at 5 o'clock, as I'm watching the races, I see this message from Woodbine: races 6 to 13 have been canceled. It rained, so it was this extraordinary rain, and it just destroyed the track, and it wasn't safe, and they had to cancel it. So now I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? I don't have 5 minutes of content. And as it turns out, I went with my son and my grandson to see Twisters. And as they're watching this movie, I'm remembering this piece of music by Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And it started to sort of build in my mind how I could put a few minutes about the rain and this wonderful song by Rosetta Tharpe. So that's what I did. I put together a story about how the King's Plate was rained out using the music of Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
And you talked to some interesting people, too, about this, because this is an unprecedented happening.
Never happened. 165 times this had never happened. And
who did you talk to? Like, you talked to some heavy hitters.
Kevin Attard is this great trainer, and he had 4 horses in the plate. And he's also a very accessible guy, and he's a pleasure to talk to. So I did an interview with him because he talked to his jockeys. And what happened is so strange because they've had heavy rain before for the Queen's Plate, and the rain on traditional dirt tracks just turns the track into mud. The sand absorbs the rain,
right.
And although it can be messy, it's not terribly dangerous. But what happened here is they have a synthetic, and they spent millions of dollars putting in all of this drainage underneath. The synthetic does not absorb the water, and when there was so much rain that it overwhelmed the drainage system.
Yeah.
The water was pooling on top, and then there was a tunnel where the horses go from the paddock area to the track that was flooded.
Wow.
And a lot of trainers were saying, well, I'm not walking my horse through 3 feet of water. Right. The horses would panic. All kinds of terrible things could happen. So it had just rained so much. It was, the word unprecedented is appropriate. Woodbine had no choice.
And they're going to run the 165th King's Plate. You know what? I remember when Queen Elizabeth II passed away, I tweeted about how, I guess it'll be the King's Plate now. And Jim Lawson replied to my tweet to tell me, and basically, hold your horses, not so fast. And of course, that was inevitable, right? This is how it has always been historically. When there is a king, it's the King's Plate. And when there is a queen, it's the Queen's Plate, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so the 165th King's Plate at Woodbine Racetrack is actually going to happen Friday. So you'll be there Friday?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
What I do is I sit at home and I record the races as they go by. There's 4 other stakes races. That's terrible for me to say. I produce this podcast and I'm not going to the King's Plate.
Yeah, I thought for sure you'd be there. You dress up. You get your monocle. I could see you wearing a monocle.
Yeah, no. If I went, I would go with the way I'm dressed now in a t-shirt and jeans.
Right.
It's funny. I'm just in a stage now where you can watch all the races on TV, on your computer, on your phone. And I produce all of this stuff, and I want to get it done. I've got, for example, the 145th issue of Down the Stretch, which is our online newspaper, is completely filled except for the one page of the King's Plate. So I'll be writing this on Friday, sending it to the proofreader.
You work hard, and you know your stuff.
Shout out to my proofreader, Susan Nash, by the way. Who does a fabulous job.
She's great.
It's amazing. I will write these stories, and I'll look at them carefully, and I'll see, this is perfect. I don't really have to send this to Susan. Susan gets it, finds 9 mistakes.
Oh, she's a keeper.
Yeah.
She's a keeper.
So that'll be a great day at the track on Friday. But Woodbine has some serious problems because they sold 17,000 reserve seats. And a lot of the people who bought these reserve seats won't be able to go on Friday. So do they refund them? Do they offer them?
What are they going to do? You did talk to Mike Copeland, right, in this episode I was listening to of Down the Stretch.
Well, don't misrepresent me. No, I didn't speak to Mike Copeland. I was watching and I saw a clip. Brody Lawson interviewed him. I found that on TV. And
I read it now. It says, a canceled King's Plate. Mike Copeland and Kevin Attard explain. It doesn't say you spoke to him. I see now. Okay.
Got to be truthful.
Maura, Blake McIntosh, Nijinsky, Diego Benitez, Yannick Gingras.
Yannick Gingras, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, he had 13 drives at Harrah's Philly last Friday. He won with 10 of them. He was second with the other 3. It is the most extraordinary day any harness driver has ever had in the 150-year history of harness driving in the world.
And that's the kind of good shit you get at Down the Stretch, the definitive Ontario horse racing podcast, produced and hosted by Peter Gross, FOTM Hall of Famer. So people should absolutely subscribe to that. Now, Phil Wizard, do you know the name Phil Wizard?
Yeah, he's the breakdancer who won gold.
Yeah. Did he perform? I don't know. There was a lot of rain, but did he get in his performance? He was going to perform at the 165th King's Plate at Woodbine.
I don't know for sure. I think not. Lou Calla, this pop rap singer. Are you familiar with Lou Calla, by the way?
No.
When Woodbine announced that Lou Calla would be performing, I looked.
You Googled him, yeah.
Yeah, her.
Sorry, see, that's how much I know.
And she's quite remarkable, and I think she's a big star. And I think Woodbine did their research properly and found someone who would attract young people to the track. But I don't think Phil Wizard performed. I don't think Lou Calla performed. Perhaps that will happen Friday.
Okay, quick baseball break. I know I already talked about Toronto Maple Leafs baseball, but this will be a Toronto Blue Jay baseball, a Major League Baseball break before we get to this name association game that I'm very, very excited about. Let me just remind you, Peter, that at recyclemyelectronics.ca, That's where you go if you have old electronics, old cables, old devices piling up in that Mississauga home of yours. You don't throw that in the garbage because the chemicals end up in our landfill. You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, find out a good place to drop it off to be properly recycled, safely recycled. You know that, though, Peter, because you're an FOTM Hall of Famer.
Do they take batteries?
You know what? Ask me that later, and I'll give you a good answer. Okay. I
got a big bag of batteries.
Now I got to fix it in post. Okay. Blake Bell is a gentleman, one of the gentlemen behind the aforementioned Twitter account, Dave Stieb Today. He heard you were coming on Toronto Mike. Blake Bell, by the way, again, has appeared on Toronto Mike because he was on the mic when I was recording at Christie Pitts a few weeks ago. Now, he says you, Peter Gross, did some beautiful video pieces with Dave Stieb in the early 80s. What was your relationship like with Dave Stieb back in the 1980s when you were at CityTV?
I think it was probably better than he had with a lot of the other reporters.
Like Hebsy.
Dave Stieb didn't have a lot of patience for the typical questions that reporters would ask him. One of my favorite moments with Dave Stieb, he pitched a three-hit shutout. He was awesome. 2 of the hits were the batters ducking out of the way and the ball dribbling off their bat. They gave up nothing.
Right.
And so in the locker room, there was this ring of reporters, about a dozen of them, around Stieb. And because they were all taller than me, I'm behind them and he can't see me.
Right.
And so they're asking these inane questions and he's bristling and he's not overly friendly. And from behind this wall of reporters, I shout out, "How do you explain the 3 hits?" and he took his hands and he parted them and he looked at me and he says, "Yeah, I guess if I was pitching to you, you would have walked."
That's why they have the Eddie Gazelle rule that prevents you from playing.
Yeah, the Eddie Goodell. Eddie Goodell was the midget.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to call him midget. The little person.
Little person, right? Yeah, midget. That word's been banned from this broadcast. Now I have to fix 2 things in post.
Yeah,
but that was a stunt. I think he was far shorter than you.
He was 3'2", and they ruled that. Which, if you were one of the little people, you should probably sue because you'd have a 6-inch strike zone.
Yeah, that's the joke. And but Dave Stieb with that sinker, although that wouldn't help him with calling these strikes here. Blake Bell shared a bunch on Twitter. People should, if they have any interest in 1980s Blue Jays baseball or Dave Stieb, who should be in the Hall of Fame. You, Peter Grosser, in the FOTM Hall of Fame. Dave Stieb should be in Cooperstown. Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, yes.
He should be in Cooperstown, right?
I think he pitched a no-hitter after going into the 9th inning with no hits 2 times previously.
At least 2 times. There was 2 weeks in a row, like 2 starts in a row. He went into the 8 2/3 of no-hit ball before he gave up. Like bad luck too. A bad bounce on the infield, just bloops. Just bad luck.
Yeah,
bad luck. Okay, so let me just play one of the many
things. You've been teasing this Dave Stieb story for an hour and a half.
Well, no, I'm actually okay. Well,
and here are Peter's 10 amazing facts about the game of baseball.
Baseball is a game of endless mathematical possibilities. Like a snowflake, no 2 ball games are exactly alike. And just when you think you figured this game out, it throws you a curve. You think you know everything about baseball? Pay attention. Here's 10 amazing things I'll bet you didn't know.
I'll tell you if I know them.
Now here's Damaso Garcia, the Blue Jays leadoff hitter. Did you know that he could come to the plate in 9 straight innings, even though the Jays lose 1-0? And how about old hard luck Steve? Did you know that Big Dave could strike out every batter he faced and still lose the game? How about this? A pitcher could give up only walks and home runs and still win the game for his team. And while we're talking about pitchers, you may find this very difficult to believe, but a pitcher can win a ball game even though he's been dead for a month. And if you believe that, you'll believe this, that a pitcher can win a game even though he belongs to the losing team. And did you know that it is possible for a pitcher to win a game without throwing the batter a pitch? How many strikes till you're out in a ball game? Did you know that a batter in the same official at bat can take 4 called strikes and not strike out? Baseball is a game in which foul balls don't count. But a foul ball can win a ball game.
Sack fly.
Baseball is a game where the team that wins the most games in the majors might still not make the playoffs. Do you believe that?
Montreal Expos.
And finally, my favorite irony. All baseball games are scheduled to go 9 innings, so why is it most games don't go 9 innings? I'm Peter Gross for City Pulse.
You probably want me to explain all this to you, do you? Well, good luck. I haven't got a clue.
So Deanie Petty and Gord Martineau are kind of the bread in that Peter Gross sandwich, and their names will come up in a moment when we play name association. But most of those I get. One of them, a batter can get, I mean, not that you could remember what you did in the 80s here, but so there's a batter could be up all 9 innings and they could still lose 1-0.
Yeah.
Something like that. Can you explain that one?
Okay, Damaso Garcia leads off, walks. Next guy walks. Next guy walks. Next guy strikes out. Next guy strikes out. Next guy strikes out. Okay.
Yeah,
So Damaso Garcia came to the plate in the first inning.
Yeah.
In the second inning,
Yeah.
the seventh batter walks. Seventh batter gets out. Eighth batter gets out. Ninth batter walks or gets a hit. So now Damaso Garcia is at the plate for the second time in 2 innings. As he's at the plate, the guy at first gets picked off. So Damaso Garcia leads off the third, but he appeared at the plate. The wording is important.
Right.
Can Damaso Garcia appear at the plate in all 9 innings?
Okay, so it's not an at-bat. It's a plate appearance. I don't know if that...
and it's the same. It's considered the same plate appearance, but he appeared at the plate in the second inning, then he'll lead off the third, repeat the sequence. It's never happened.
Okay, no, of course not. But so in a lot of those, the answers, a lot of them is like, so you can have a game suspended and then they pick it up like 6 weeks later. A player could be traded or whatever, and could play for get a win for the other team, and that explains how you can die and get the win, because you could be the pitcher a record and they pick it up a month later, but you died. And like, of course, sack fly. If you catch a foul ball, you can still tag up, right? And the other one that explains some of those is balks, right? So a pitcher could come into a game. I don't know. He could balk. A run could.
Well, when I did that, I was thinking, pitcher comes into a game, it's tied top of the 9th. He picks off the guy at first to end the inning. Doesn't throw a pitch to the batter. Team wins in the bottom of the 9th. He's the winning pitcher without throwing a pitch.
Right. Okay. So fascinating. And I just pulled that quickly because many were shared on that Dave Stieb account. And you had many an interaction with Dave Stieb, who should be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Speaking of which, real quick here before we move on to my name association, which I am very excited about, I want to ask you about Pete Rose, because I follow you on social media and particularly Facebook. And I believe you, maybe you saw a documentary series or something that kind of influenced you so that you thought Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. And a great discussion. And I just want to hear your thoughts on it, because I think that it's he bet on his own games. I think that is that is the third rail of all this, is that he's not just betting on sports. He's not even just betting on Major League Baseball, which is actually, grounds for whatever, banishment or whatever. But he bet on his own games. Yes, he's picking his team to win. But as you know, as a baseball fan, as manager, he could drain use his best relievers in that game to get the win. And then that causes the next game to be, you can't use those relievers again. Like, he could have a lot of influence over that game that he wouldn't have done that if he didn't bet on his team. Like, it's third rail to me. I want to hear from you about Pete Rose, because no one cares what I think about Pete Rose.
I believe Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. It's funny. I got in an argument with Garnett. Garnett does not believe Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because Pete Rose is an asshole.
Oh, that's not a good reason, because Ty Cobb was an asshole.
Ty Cobb beat a one-armed man during a baseball game.
A lot of assholes in baseball.
If you're going to measure character, then you start going down a slippery slope. Just the way Pete Rose played the game. I think of Vladimir Guerrero, and fortunately he's been playing much better since May. But there were a couple instances early in the season where he hit a ground ball and walked to first, and the infielder fumbled the ball. And Pete Rose never
Charlie
did that.
Hustle.
Yeah. He's famous for breaking a guy's leg gliding into home plate
at an All-Star
game.
And he would run to first when he walked, right? Like, this is a guy who would take a walk and he'd run to first.
He was an exciting ball player. He was a great, skilled ball player, a fabulous hitter. Does he still hold the record for most hits?
Yep.
Well, how can you keep the guy who holds the record for most hits
Yeah, but you know
out of
the
Hall
answer
of
to that
Fame.
question because he bet on baseball.
He's admitted it. He hasn't completely. He had the opportunity to say, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I regret doing it." He should have specifically said that. I don't know what went on between him and baseball Commissioner Bart Giametti, but just based on his career, on what he did on the baseball field. Keep in mind,
Yeah,
he bet on baseball when he was a manager.
right.
Right. So don't put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame as a manager, but as a baseball player, just on the numbers alone.
Okay.
And the fact that he's been barred from the Hall of Fame, has it been 30 years?
It's been a while. Now,
Yeah,
Moose Grumpy's got your back in the live stream. So also, thank you, Ian Service, who confirms what I was waiting for confirmation from the great Ian Service. Yes, recyclemyelectronics.ca takes batteries. Okay, that's huge. So your battery question, I don't have to fix it in post because I came back to tell everybody recyclemyelectronics.ca batteries are accepted. Okay, and Moose Grumpy, who's got your back, says Pete Rose. I think she means Pete Gross. No, I just can't. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of players getting away with far worse now. Domestic violence, drug abuse, far worse than betting. So I'm just going to chime in and say two things. One is, you being an asshole should not have any. That's where I hate it. I don't think assholes should be prohibited from being in the Hall of Fame. Okay, there's a lot of assholes. I think this might have worked against Dave Stieb because, unlike you, Peter Gross, a lot of sports writers who had a vote had bad experiences with Dave Stieb, and they kind of want to stick it to the guy.
I wonder if his career was not as long as others. I'm not sure what his win total was.
Well,
like 100.
late 70s to early, because 92, and then he does the little comeback where he comes as a reliever just to do a little mop up at the end. But over a decade. Okay. But now let me just say, so the character, I'm with you 100%. The character shouldn't have anything to do with it. And I also agree that it's what happens between the lines. But the betting on baseball is the reason he's not in the Hall of Fame, the reason he's banned from baseball. And I think you can argue what's worse, betting on baseball or beating your girlfriend up or something. No contest what's worse. But that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that you have this third rail in baseball where if you bet on baseball and you have an influence over the game, like a manager, that's not acceptable. You agree that as a betting man, you agree that you can't have your manager betting on his own team.
No, that's wrong. But
so like maybe in a different universe where he owns how wrong that is and he says he's sorry, and maybe after a certain amount of time they let him back in or something like that. But he didn't even do that move.
I'm not sure that he's been apologetic enough. By the way, in horse racing, it's completely acceptable for the owner of a horse to put a $20 win ticket
different.
in the helmet of his jockey.
Yeah, that's different though, right? Because you're that's an individual sport, if you will. It's like right, this is a team sport. And like I said, the best example I can think of is okay, you got your reliever. You have a series, a 3-game series or whatever. You basically drain the swamp in terms of available relievers to win that game as if it's game 7 of the World Series, okay? Meanwhile, you got to play tomorrow and you've depleted your bullpen. Huge advantage to the other team for that next game and even the game afterwards. That's the kind of shit that will go down when you bet on your own team. Like you're not playing...
What if Pete Rose was betting on every game? Then he could be considering that.
Well, if we get the slips, okay, find the slips. If Pete Rose bet on every game to win, we're going to put him in the Hall of Fame. Okay, so, but I do like his hustle, and I don't care that he's an asshole.
By the way, I need to point out, just to promote myself, the night Pete Rose hit, what was the number? 4,292? I think it was 4,292.
I remember the day, though.
I did one of my better stories. I went out with this wonderful camera woman, Sheila Cameron, and I think you can find this on YouTube. Pete Rose got his record-breaking hit that night in Montreal while playing for the Phillies. Right. That afternoon, I went out looking for my 4,292nd story, and it starts with Sparky Anderson reading the record book, going, "Pete, look at this!" You know, Pete Rose, Pete Gross.
Love it.
And if you can find it, it's a lot of fun.
And of course, Sparky Anderson, former Toronto Maple Leaf. Do you know that? Baseball, of course.
Who are you talking to? I went to...
who am I talking to, Peter?
I went to a Toronto Maple Leaf, Montreal... what was the Montreal...
Royals.
Thank you, the Montreal Royals. This was a game in 1961. And
Jackie Robinson.
Sparky Anderson was the playing manager at second base, and a guy named Al Seacott pitched an 11-inning no-hitter. I used to go to all of the Toronto Maple Leaf baseball games down at the old Maple Leaf Stadium.
Okay, shout out to Larry Milson, who was often there as well, and has told us that story on Toronto Mike. Okay, so quick fun fact. I think it's fun. It's fun because you're so healthy and you look so great right now. But on this exact day, August 19th, on this exact day in 2020, you visited my backyard because COVID wouldn't let us do it down here. And you told us all about your stroke. That was episode 709.
Was that 4 years ago?
4 years ago
and I'm
today.
still alive?
And you're thriving. And by the way, since your last appearance on Toronto Mike, there was an episode with John Gallagher where he took my phone call and we had a lengthy conversation. Did you catch any of that?
I believe I did.
Well, maybe you've been over since then because you come over. Okay, so John Gallagher also had a stroke, and he seems to be suffering more than you in that he gets very tired often, and you just seem to never miss. You never skipped a beat with your stroke.
First of all, it was a TIA. It's called I don't even know what it stands for, but the most mild stroke you can have, the most benign stroke. I had 45 minutes of shattered vision, which resulted in me getting an eye test, which resulted in the optometrist saying
45 minutes. Because I feel like I've had that. I feel like there's these, I've seen like, I've had tunnel vision before.
Yeah, well, then you may have had a stroke. But what was frightening was, even though I was completely cogent within my brain, I couldn't make the words come out.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember I was sitting there just laughing at myself. And then it went away, and then it was fine.
Right.
And I remember, I think the next day I phoned my mother and I said, I had this unusual thing happen. And she said, "You stupid boy, get yourself to..." So I ended up going to the hospital and spent 26 hours at Queensway. And I'm on some kind of medication and there's been no recurrence.
Can you name that artist?
Oh, it's familiar.
This is Graham Shaw.
Oh, but that's old City Pulse music.
I'm going to just bring you back with some
Before
music.
the Rocky theme.
Yes. Before Gonna Fly Now. Speaking of the Rocky theme, I'm flipping channels. Like we used to do this back in the day. I'm talking to a guy who remembers, and nowadays no one flips channels because they just on demand select what they want. They go right there. Tonight on City Pulse, Peter Gross. So we're going to talk about that. But so I'm flipping channels, and I just catch like the last half an hour of Creed 2. Creed 2. Apollo Creed's son, played by Michael B. Jordan from The Wire. And I'm watching it. So you got Sly Stallone is in his corner. And then I see, oh my God, it's the Russian from Rocky 4. So, and the guy that Creed is fighting is the guy from Rocky 4, the Russian, his son. So it's like, but then I hear the chords to Gonna Fly Now. And I'm all for it, man. It's like they just keep making the same movie over and over again. And they just kind of add like, okay, now it's Apollo Creed's son. And now he's fighting the Russian son. And Sly is the ring man, sort of like, slip the jab, Rocky. Anyway, I enjoyed the last half hour of Creed 2. That's all. But what do you think of when you hear this music?
I think of Deanie Petty.
Okay, well, let's start right there. I've been so excited about this, Peter. This could sink like a lead balloon. By the way, I love that you dated a camera woman named Cameron. Was that her name?
Date her.
You didn't date her. Okay.
No, she shot.
I missed her that part.
Great woman, she was a great camera.
You did not date her.
We did wonderful stories together.
Okay, my apologies.
I wish I did.
I thought I heard you dated her. My apologies. Okay. So, Peter, I'm going to say a name, and you're just going to tell me your initial thoughts on this name. I'm going to do the same thing with Leona Boyd, but I need to test and practice, and you're the person I'm practicing with. Ready? Deanie Petty.
Deanie Petty, outrageous, charming, beautiful, uninhibited. And I'll tell you the most ridiculous Deanie Petty story.
Yes, please.
We'd gone to shoot some intermediate hockey game, junior B or something. And so we're in the dressing room doing interviews. And one guy, for reasons that I can't explain, dropped his pants, posed completely naked in front of the camera and said, "Say hi to Deanie Petty for me." And I think we showed it to her, and she was very
loved
good.
it.
She was good with it.
Okay, I'll just point out, Deanie Petty is an FOTM, but not in the FOTM Hall of Fame like you, Peter. So there you go. One
Very
up for
fond,
you.
very fond of Deanie Petty. Just a great anchor person, a great journalist, and a really interesting, attractive human being.
And because we heard his voice introducing that segment I played from Dave Stieb today, Gord Martineau.
Gord Martineau is a much better news anchor than anyone gives him credit for. I'll tell you a story that I saw him do this one time. It was the end of the show, the last few minutes, and I think it might have been Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was Ted Kennedy was speaking at Maple Leaf Gardens, and they threw the copy on the
Teleprompter.
Thank you, teleprompter. That was the word I was looking for.
I'm from the business, Peter.
Okay, and
which Ted Kennedy, quickly, because there's a famous Maple Leaf Ted Kennedy.
no, Ted Kennedy,
The Kennedy,
one of the Kennedy brothers. But on the teleprompter, it said Bobby Kennedy.
Oh.
Okay, so now you're Gord Martineau, and this is coming up, and you had no idea.
Right.
And without missing a beat, he said Ted Kennedy. That's number one. I never forgot that.
He's a pro.
And number two, I was at the City Television studios the day of 9/11, and they worked Martineau from like 9 in the morning to 10 at night, and he never lost a beat. It was incredible journalism. He's also a great guy. And I'll tell you, I got a third story. I got 2 tickets. I think it was 1981 when Canada played Russia in that hockey series.
Yes.
And so I ended up saying to Gord, do you want to drive to Montreal? And of course he wanted to because he's from Montreal. Off we go. And that was the game that the Russians beat Canada. I think the score was 8-1. And I didn't give a shit, but he was furious. He was stomping his feet. It was agony for him. And afterwards, he took me to a bar. We went to multiple bars. Everyone recognized him and kept buying us free drinks. So,
wow.
Gord Martineau, the consummate pro and a really engaging individual.
Coming up next, Modern Family. Okay, so now this is a woman I mentioned. I just talked to Jennifer Valentine, and I shared that story about the substitute teacher who was your older brother, Dan. Here's a woman I just chatted with, and we're working on getting her to make her Toronto Mike debut, but via Zoom because she lives in the United States of America, so it's tough for her to get to South Etobicoke. Thalia Asheris.
I don't know much to say about Thalia Asheris.
Well, that's part of this fun, is like some people you won't have anything to say, but you know this person.
She was there, competent, bright reporter. I'm not sure what her length of tenure was. I don't think it was terribly long.
No, she went to Global.
At City Bus, did she? Okay.
Went to Global, and then she went to the United States.
Just a bright, competent, obviously successful woman.
So no, you didn't snort any coke with her in the back of a limo?
No, I didn't. Okay. I would know if I did, yeah.
Jim Taddy.
Taddy. I have to restrain myself a bit here.
That's not part of this game, Peter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Taddy did wonderful work with Bob McCowan on Sportsline. Is that what it was called? On Global?
Yes, on Global Sportsline.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So a very, very skilled guy. But what stands out for me with Jim Taddy is this, and it's just kind of weird remembering it. I was sports director there for a while, and we hired Taddy, and somewhere along the line, there was a gay baseball tournament. And I said to Jim, go cover the gay baseball tournament. And he went, oh no. Somehow afraid that if he was seen covering the gay baseball tournament, people would think he was gay. And I just thought that was weird. He refused to do it.
All right, you're not holding back today, Peter. Okay, here's a name for you. And I've been trying to get this gentleman on Toronto Mike, and any help you can give me would be appreciated. I would even let him zoom in. I'm trying to get Jojo Chinto to make his Toronto Mike debut. I did have a phone call with him, but I'm trying to get him on the program. Jojo Chinto.
I spoke with Jojo a while back, and he seems somewhat inclined to do it. He's not 100% healthy. He's got some kind of slow cancer in an organ, and he may have had one organ removed.
But he can zoom it in.
Jojo Chinto is amongst the top 5 most fascinating people you will ever meet in your life. And I'll tell you something about Jojo. I left CityTV in 1986 in a blaze of unglory.
Right.
And I lived on the 3rd floor of a house for several months, no income whatsoever, no car, no girlfriend. I did have a cat, which was important. couple times Jojo just came by on his own and gave me $50.
That's beautiful, man.
Like I not phoning him saying, Joe, I'm in trouble. Can you help me out? Just, Gross, you need help. Here's money. That's my very bad Jojo Chinto. Everyone does a Jojo Chinto. Wonderful, great human being. Love running into him when I do. Unfortunately, I don't think he's in the greatest health. I will try.
Ask him tell him I'll even do it either on the phone or Zoom, whichever he prefers, and just to capture his bio, sort of like I did with Harold. Well, Harold Hossein, who's in much better condition, it sounds like, came here for his Toronto Mike debut. But he says it's the only interview he's done about his career. I'm talking about Harold Hossein. I don't see a lot of Jojo Chinto content out there, and I desperately want to capture it. So you'll just tell him I'm willing to Zoom. I will do it via smoke signals. We can use walkie-talkies.
You know, it's funny. Jim McKenney, I speak with McKenney quite often, and in our last conversation, he said he was in Burlington and had lunch with Stephen Hurlbut and Jojo Chinto.
Oh,
I said, why didn't you call me? I would have come.
Yeah, you would have been fit right in there. Okay, Hurlbut though, don't tell John Gallagher you're lunching with Hurlbut. Gallagher, he just becomes like a Jekyll and Hyde. He becomes an angry monster when you say the name Hurlbut. But you have a decent relationship with the man.
Yeah. Oh, Hurlbut fired me. But
okay, this is called Stockholm syndrome.
Hurlbut's a complicated individual, extremely bright. Qualified 5 stars to be a news director, but there was a period at City Pulse where people were terrified of him, and I can say this with impunity because I worked at 680 News for 24 years. That was never 680 News was never a poisoned environment. City Pulse, when Stephen Hurlbut was there, was a poisoned environment.
Toxic, they call that.
Yeah. David Onley tells a story about interviewing some psychological advice. I don't know what the guy was. And so they're sitting in the middle of that open City Pulse newsroom. And at one moment, the guy looks at Onley and says, did somebody frightening just step into the newsroom? And Onley could see behind his guest that Hurlbut had walked into the newsroom. People were terrified of him because Hurlbut was famous for castigating people in front of everybody else. I can tell you a Catherine Humphreys story.
Catherine Humphreys.
I love Catherine Humphreys, by the way. Catherine Humphreys did a sportscast one time, and she ran a very funny, I think at the end, a very funny shot of a soccer player who'd scored a goal, and in the celebration, he slides on his knees, and his teammate slides face first into his pants so that his face is right in the guy's crotch.
Right.
And Catherine was just probably hilarious, saying, I guess that's just how they express affection. And from what I understand, right after the newscast, Hurlbut came barreling into the sports department, screaming at her and screaming at Perry Gray, the sports director. Why would you run that? Why would you run that? So there were some style moments from Stephen Hurlbut that frightened people.
I'm sorry to hear that because it looked like such a happy group, and then to hear there's some toxicity. But okay, here's some more names from this group. Okay, Anne Mroskowski.
Anne Mroskowski, just great anchor person. Little wound up. I think,
like, because she was a serious newswoman.
Yeah. And I may be treading into uncomfortable territory here because she was in her 40s or maybe early 50s at the time, terrified. And she was a very attractive woman.
She still is, by the way.
Terrified that younger, prettier women were going to take her place. Here's my Anne Mroskowski story, and it goes along with her. But we were asked to show up at a public school just to talk to the kids about broadcasting. And when we're in the car, so a cameraman was driving us. I'm in the car with Anne Mroskowski. She's steaming. She's furious. She doesn't want to do this. Okay, she's swearing. She's just like really wound up. We get into the school, absolute professionalism.
Right.
She couldn't have been nicer or sweeter.
Okay, good. Yeah, I always have great experiences with Anne Ruskowski.
She's probably a great interview when you do her. Yeah.
One of the greats, honestly. There's a woman who should be in the FOTM Hall of Fame. Her 2 visits were both epic. And I got to meet her significant other recently. He actually runs the Toronto Festival of Beer. And I was there to see Cypress Hill just merely a few weeks ago. So small world here. Okay. Lauren Honickman.
Lauren Honickman. I've been talking to Lauren a lot lately.
Well, he's delightful, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to him about Bob Dylan, is that correct?
No.
You know, and I know some of these names are going to be obvious. Lauren, there's going to be, Lauren Honickman, but just a delight.
Well, just a really intelligent guy, and think of the career. A television journalist and a lawyer. Yeah. I was a television journalist and a cab driver.
Is that origin story? We debunked that myth, right? That Moses just liked the cut of your jib when you were driving him somewhere.
It's a little more complicated than that. I picked up Phyllis Switzer one time. I never picked up Moses.
Hey, wait. So we all know the name Jay Switzer. What name is this?
Phyllis Switzer is Jay Switzer's mother, okay. and Phyllis was instrumental in the origin of CityTV. Okay. Maybe even more so than Moses.
So you pick up Phyllis Switzer.
And
Moses, how does Moses come? Like, she basically likes the cut of your jib.
I think there was this was 1972.
Wow.
Pick up Phyllis Switzer in my taxi.
Right.
And I was living with 4 or 5 other people in this house at Bay and Schollard. And we were living this sort of bohemian existence. And I think I said to Phyllis Switzer, would you consider bringing a camera in and we'll just sort of sew all of the elements of our lives together? Like it was a premise for a reality show 25 years before there was any reality show. And she was very interested and she wanted to do it. And ultimately, it never happened for a number of reasons. One, we couldn't come up with a script, and there simply you couldn't bring in those massive television cameras.
Right.
You needed the shoulder packs, which weren't even invented yet. So,
right.
But through Phyllis Switzer, well, I ended up infiltrating CityTV somehow, and writing. There was a newscaster named John Mitter, and they had a half-hour news show at 9:30. I ended up writing the sports for $5 a night.
And there's your gateway.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
And it just kind of evolved from there.
Okay, because that myth is out there that Moses needed a cab and you were the cab driver and he just liked your character and Moses just said, hey, come by and see
That never
me.
happened. But
come to 99 Queen Street East and have a conversation.
There were multiple times when there was one city television cameraman, Don Purser, and the city television camera truck broke down. And so on multiple occasions, they would call me and I would pick them up. I would pick them up. And I think at one point he said, hold the mic, or do something. And I might have done a story because of that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you know a cameraman named Greg Valentine?
I think Greg Valentine worked for the breakfast show and not for he may have worked for City Pulse. Greg Valentine was
Jennifer Peck, knocked up Jennifer Peck, I think is his official title.
Okay. I can't say anything about Greg Valentine. I didn't know him.
Just there's a famous wrestler named Greg the Hammer Valentine that I grew up with used to wrestle with Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So shout out to Greg the Hammer Valentine. But Greg Valentine is how Jennifer Peck becomes Jennifer Valentine. And I just learned last week that he's a huge Toronto Mic'd fan. So I want to say hello. I'm also told he's very shy, but I want to say hello to Greg Valentine and kudos to you, sir. Jeff Ansell.
Jeff Ansell, did he at some point take over from Peter Silverman with the consumer?
Because Silverman is canceled when Rogers owned CityTV, and Jeff was long gone by then.
I thought Jeff Ansell did consumer stories. Again, another guy that I worked with.
That was Fred Patterson from Humble and Fred. I will call him back.
We hung up on Fred Patterson. So, by
the way, Fred Patterson, who tells me he would copy your style when he would do sports commentaries on CFNY for the Pete and Geet show. He says he would look at what Peter Gross was doing on CityTV and try to mimic that because he felt you were the greatest at your craft.
I don't think
no joke.
I don't think that's true.
Well, that's his opinion, man.
Patterson had his own style.
Patterson tells me he mimicked his style, based it on you. Someone has to inspire. Everybody's inspired by somebody. You inspired Fred Patterson. Well, just like you inspired, just like you're responsible for the careers of Mike Wilner and Jason Portwando.
Mike Wilner would never have been anything in this industry if it wasn't.
I know.
No, that's not true.
Well, you hired him at 680.
I did. And I
gave him a big start.
I quite frankly had to crack the whip with him because I saw a really, really talented guy. I said, get your ass in here and audition.
Right. And what about Jason Portwando? Because, Jason is the reason I produced Donovan Bailey's great podcast. And they were here just, I guess it was Thursday or Friday last week. I've lost track. But Jason Portwando got in the game because of you as well.
Well, we've told the story many times. I'm standing in line
before I get to the next name
at a bank machine at Woodbine to get more money to bet. And he comes up to me. When is this? It might have been 1990, 1980, whatever.
Yeah.
And says, I'm an exercise boy. I want to get into broadcasting. And like I said to everybody, anyone who ever came up to me, I'd say, give me a call. You can come down to the station. And he came down and he was very good. And he is very good, by the way. He ended up being, I believe, the first black sportscaster in Kingston. Oh. He parlayed that into business at Sportsnet and some great stuff, anchoring the races at Woodbine, and now he's
at TSN. Yeah.
Now he's a judge. Which is it's a job for life that pays well, and he's got the great background for that.
Yeah, he's amazing. Now, here is a gentleman I've always wanted to ask you about, and I'm finally going to do it right now. John Saunders.
Oh, John Saunders, lovely man. We hired John Saunders. It was weird. I was the sports director, and we hired John Saunders, who was so much a better sports anchor than I was. So so they gave him the 6 o'clock show, and I couldn't complain about that. He was just a terrific sports anchor. And one of the great moments in my life is Sonny's Halo had won the 1982 or 83 Kentucky Derby. And so he was going to run in the Preakness in Baltimore. And at that time, John Saunders was the sports anchor with WMAR in Baltimore. And he said, well, if you come down, I can get you passes. And we ended up watching the Preakness from the roof of Pimlico Racetrack with John Saunders, which turned out to be a very expensive day because I bet $700 to win on Sonny's Halo, and he was done by the far turn.
Oh, that's funny. Now, John Saunders left us far too soon. We've had many, Leo Rowdens, for example, we've gone on and on about their relationship when the Raptors come to town in 1995. But John Saunders, sad loss. It sounds like a lot of people were mentored by him.
I think he committed suicide. You didn't want to say that?
Well, not that. First of all, I don't know what's going to come out of your mouth, but I don't know that to be the fact. But you might know that to be the fact.
I don't know.
Regardless,
that to be
it's sad. It's sad. However, John has passed away.
6 or so. That day, by the way, just to tell you a little anecdote about John Saunders.
Yeah.
That day, he's driving me around, and as he's driving, he pulls his pants down to his knees, takes an insulin needle, and jabs himself in the thigh.
Oh, he was diabetic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a U of T invention, discovery, if you will, insulin to control diabetes.
Nothing gets by you, does it?
Banting and Best. Frederick Banting and I can't remember, Charles Best, I think. I bet it, but Banting and Best. I went to U of T and they made a big deal out of it. Okay. Brian Linehan.
Oh, my goodness, Brian Linehan. Just to do a little sidebar here, yeah. I often say that you, Mike Boone, is the Brian Linehan of podcasting. This man set the bar so high in research. There was nothing like Brian Linehan. And the gag, the repetitive gag, is the famous actor or actress saying, "How did you know that?"
Right.
He did his research.
Right.
He was a wonderful.
In the days before Wikipedia, he was he was so prepared.
I'm not sure if I talked to him 3 or 4 times in my life. He was always nice.
Good to hear. We'll burn. I realize now that I got a few more names. So we'll burn through some of these names here. But J.D. Roberts.
J.D. Roberts, I once hosted Toronto Rocks.
But, he wasn't the main host of Toronto Rocks, right? Like, that was John Major.
Oh, John Major, yeah. J.D. Roberts.
But you can say a word about John Major, too. But J.D. Roberts was the new music, and then he's the first VJ at Much Music, and then he went into news.
Yeah,
now he's at
what
Fox.
A transformation, eh?
Yeah, now he's John Roberts, and now he won't talk to me on Toronto Mike. But quick one sentence on her, because we talk about her so often. Jeannie Becker.
I love Jeannie Becker. I love Jeannie Becker. And you know what I love about Jeannie Becker is nobody suffered as much as Jeannie Becker in terms of terrible comments in the media and from people about Jeannie Becker, and she's just soldiered through.
But what terrible comments? I'm just curious, because she's cute as a button, still wearing the swimsuit. I see
people commented on her looks and said terrible things about her.
That's too bad, because
I just my memory is that nobody else had to put up with that as much as Jeannie Becker.
Trailblazer, maybe. She was, fashion television, and still going strong. I know she's had some health setbacks, but she seems to be dealing with it all in kind there. But we all root for FOTM Jeannie Becker on this program, and you've had some fun times in limousines with her.
One fun time, yeah. We went to the Queen's Plate ball, which they don't even have anymore. And I rented a tux, and she wore a taller Cranston outfit that he designed. And the story of us doing cocaine in the limo is not necessarily true. I don't know. It may be true, maybe it isn't. I don't know.
Okay, Ann Romer.
Ann Romer. Did you ever see the Toronto Sunshine picture of Ann Romer?
No, do you have it on your phone there? Let me see.
No,
here.
I don't have it. Oh my God.
I need to see that. Absolutely.
Just
hook that to my veins. Let's go.
I mean, she was maybe 20 or 19, just absolutely adorable. I mean, she's an extremely attractive woman. What can I say about Ann Romer? You know that there was a point where she quit City Pulse or would to become an airline hostess or to work with the airlines. And clearly that didn't work out, and then she came back. And now she's selling thermal windows.
I know Anderson Windows. I see these ads all the time. She found a way to get back on CP24.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. A lot of time, as everybody knows, we have a lot of time for Ann Romer on this program. Just one sentence about this gentleman, Mark Daly.
Oh, just one sentence?
Well, it's up to you. I don't know how much time you have. I know we were going to do an hour,
I went to Mark
Daly's.
I went to Mark Daly's funeral. How many people do you think will be at your funeral?
Oh, God. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. I'm thinking it's got to be at least as popular as a TMLX event, right? So, I don't know, 100 people?
Well, that'd be, yeah. There was like 600. And
wow.
And the Premier of Ontario and the Chief of Police.
Wow.
What a character. What a talent. And the business between him and Catherine Humphreys is legendary. Just the charisma. The energy,
rapport.
the rapport between them on the Late Show. There's nothing like it in TV right now.
Well, TV is boring now, right? There were characters, and it was interesting.
Yeah.
And
the following program contains adult themes, nudity, and coarse language. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
See, I'm surprised. What I'm expecting there is the following program contains nude content. Oh boy. That's what Mark would say. And then he would throw to a movie and he'd say, this movie, I saw it. I think it sucked, but I hope you like it.
It's Porky's.
Yeah.
Man, I was having these memories lately of movies I'd watch on Late Great Movies in the 80s. And then I can find them on Tubi or something and kind of revisit them. One that I revisited this weekend that I used to watch on Late Great Movies was Rock and Roll High School. And the Ramones are in this thing. And it's just a wild trip, man, to just go back and watch Rock and Roll High School and remember watching it on CityTV's Late Great Movies.
You know what? You've brought up a cast of characters from the 70s that these people don't exist on TV anymore. And they were loved. People loved.
But can I ask you, do you think it's because the corporations running media now are risk averse?
Yeah.
And if you have these characters, they're less controllable. You're at more risk because who knows what a Peter Gross is going to say.
This all has to do with Moses Znaimer, who came out of the CBC and wanted to deconstruct the very, very narrow parameters of news reporting.
Right.
That's why he hired me.
Right.
I did not look like a 1960s news anchor. That's why nobody would have hired Jojo Chinto. They actually sent Jojo Chinto to diction classes because his accent was so strong. When they hired black people in the late 60s and 70s, they hired black people who looked like white people. Jojo Chinto looked like an African. There's a story about Mary Garofalo.
Okay, she's on my list, so let's talk about Mary now.
Well, the story I want to tell.
Yeah.
She came to Moses as Mary Garfell, and Moses said, "What's your real name?" She said, "Mary Garofalo." He said, "You will be Mary Garofalo."
Well, it's like Anne Ruskowski. No one asked her to become, I always say, like Anne Malone or something like that, right?
Well, Gord Martineau was Gord Martin when he worked in Montreal.
Right.
They had to anglicize it.
That's bullshit right there. So what was your relationship like with Mary Garofalo?
Fringe. Fine.
Fringe, okay.
Fine. But again, not someone that I associated with on a social basis.
Right. She came up recently. I'll drop this name too because he just came on since your last appearance. Dominic Shulo.
Dominic Shulo was, he started out as a cameraman, and then I think he became an important producer for shows for Moses. And again, somebody that I saw, someone I may have talked to from time to time.
Right.
I don't have much insight into him. Obviously, a very bright professional individual.
And when he was on Toronto Mike, his speaking pattern and delivery style, to me, sounds like Moses Znaimer's. Like he's been adopted it almost. Like maybe he's talked to him so much, he's become that persona a little bit.
Did you ever see the video I did where Columbo interviews Moses
Yes,
Znaimer?
Of course I have. Absolutely.
I used to do a reasonably good Moses.
Debbie Van Kiekeveld.
Oh, Debbie Van Kiekeveld. Okay, so here's a great, because we want to include as much nude content as possible.
Well, viewer discretion is advised.
I don't know what we were shooting at a club that Debbie Van Kiekeveld worked for. Jim McKinney and I were there. We may have been playing squash. So we go and we're having a shower. So Jim and I are showering, and it's leaking on the floor below. So Debbie Van Kiekeveld has to come up. Jim and I are having a shower. It was just funny. We didn't give a shit.
I think that was Porky's too.
Yeah.
You're describing right now.
Debbie Van Kiekeveld. First of all, second of all, third of all, whatever.
Well, Ann Romer takes her gig, right? I feel like that was the sequel. Didn't Ann Romer take over for Debbie Van Kiekeveld? Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm fuzzy on that. But I can tell you this. In 1990, 680 News offered the morning show sportscast to Debbie Van Kiekeveld. She had 2 young children at the time. She wasn't going to come in at 4 a.m. She said, "You should get Peter Gross." That's how I got that gig for 10 years.
Okay, but that's before it went all news.
Yeah.
When it was still all hits.
You're right. It was 680 News, then 1994.
I think 93 or something.
95.
Only because I recently did that anniversary episode with the aforementioned Richard Southern and Mike Eppel, and of course Scott Metcalf as well.
There's also a great 30-second promo of me, Jim, and Debbie for the City Pulse sports team, if you can find it.
Amazing. I will dig that up for sure.
It's out there somewhere. It's great.
Russ Salzberg.
There's a character. I have to say
too big for this country. We lost him. He was too big a character.
I have to say that I'm fond of Russ, but we hired Russ Salzberg, and I wasn't particularly happy about hiring him. I said, why would we hire a guy with a Brooklyn accent? And about 6 weeks in, he had done a number of interviews, or as he called them, interviews. And I was sports director. McKinney ran 3 or 4 of these interviews. And Moses had been very specific that he wanted to see things moving. He didn't want
kinetic.
kinetic.
Absolutely.
That was the word.
That's
he
the
used.
word. Right.
He wanted to be kinetic.
That's why the environment was such.
And interviews that were death. Guys. So I was criticizing McKinney for running so many interviews, and the next thing I know, Russ Salzberg is in my face. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what which was extraordinary behavior for someone towards his boss. There was nothing I could do about that. While he was at CityTV, he was constantly moving videos of himself to New York. And he ended up, and to his credit, ended up for a certain period of time working in both television and radio in New York, making a shitload of money. Incredibly famous for the split screen with Mike Tyson, which I'm sure you're aware of. Yes. Tyson is swearing, and Russ is saying, Mike, why are you using this language? Why are you talking like this? And Mike says, so turn your TV off. And Russ does. Russ cuts off Mike Tyson.
Oh, that's funny.
But if I ran into him, it would, and I have many years ago, it would be fine.
Here's a woman I ran into recently, Kathy Kastner.
Kathy Kastner, one of John Kastner's younger sister. You're going way back with me because she was at City for a short period of time.
She did get a camp. So I don't know if you'll ever be able to see it, but the 299 Queen Street West documentary about Much Music has like this little clip of Kathy Kastner talking on CityTV. I think about getting the license for Much Music or something like that. But she does have a little cameo in there. But I met her at this event, this David Kynes breakfast for Hollywood Suite. I met Kathy Kastner, and I wondered if you had any interactions with her.
I can give you a second degree of connection with her, with John Kastner.
Well, the Kastners are all kind of fascinating. Yeah. Tell me about John
I was doing stand-up comedy with Gene Taylor at the Friars Tavern at Dundas Square in Yonge.
Wow.
And I was sometimes amusing.
They renamed that. It's Sankofa Square.
Okay. Yeah. I was sometimes amusing, obviously not a great stand-up comedian. John Kastner came in one night and slayed and just killed. And I'm watching going, he's so much better than me. I'll never make it as a stand-up comedian.
Oh, that's funny. Glenn Cole.
Glenn Cole.
Because that's the voice. Like often you'll hear the voice tonight, whatever. Peter Gross on Dave Stieb.
Just a lovely man. And I see this image of him sitting at the end of that desk at 99 Queen, not at 299 Queen.
Right.
In the original newsroom, which the size of it is laughable by standards today. Lovely, sweet man. Again, probably a guy who died much too early.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't even have a good memory of this guy, but John Burgess.
John Burgess.
Like, does that name resonate with you?
Well, he did some entertainment stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, just wondering if you...
Yeah, that's much like some of the other names. I worked with John Burgess, tall guy. I can tell you that. That's not much insight.
Well, to you, everybody's tall, right? So, you think Stu Stone is a giant. Colin Vaughn.
Colin Vaughn. Yeah, I remember he died on New Year's Eve, I think. Great reporter. There's a guy who he was a counselor, a Toronto counselor, who became a reporter, totally fearless, and so that his insight into politics was unassailed.
4 more to go here. I'm actually loving this. This was this is just a dress rehearsal for me to do the name association. I'm going to do this with Leona Boyd in the fall. But I wanted to practice it and see how it would fly, and you were the perfect guy to do this with. So 4 more names, okay? David Onley.
Oh, I'm going to cry if I talk about David Onley.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. That's the money shot right there.
There was a period at CityTV where we shared the desk. We faced each other. The story of David Onley, one of the last people to get polio. And he tells this wonderful story because he was so bright. He was doing these science reports on the radio, and he got a call from Moses. And in a million years, David Onley thought, I can never be on TV because I'm in a wheelchair.
Right.
And because Moses was Moses and wanted real people, he understood that putting an individual in a wheelchair opened it up to a huge population that would... My mother called me the night she saw David Onley on TV, and she was crying. She says, I can't believe that they would do something that is so beautiful. And I think the story goes, the first couple times that they shot David, they shot him from the waist up, and Moses said, you shoot him in the wheelchair. You show him.
Well done.
And I think I'm trying to remember why I interviewed David Onley because he once represented the Queen at the Queen's Plate. Oh, yeah, this is a great story. So
Yeah, he was lieutenant governor of this
when he was
province,
lieutenant, right? So I went to Queen's Park, and this is funny because it's kind of like if you became the lieutenant governor. Well, I knew you as a friend before that.
Right.
So I go, and some guy in just a $1,000 suit meets me and say, "You will wait here, and the lieutenant governor will come out." And you go through this whole process.
Yeah.
And I remember interviewing him about the Queen's Plate and about representing the Queen. But I asked him at the time.
Do you remember me?
Or I asked him subsequently about the anti-vaxxers, and he got furious. He got rude because had there been a polio vaccine
Right.
so many years before, I mean, polio was wiped out because of a vaccine.
Yes.
Measles wiped out because of a vaccine. And here are these anti-vaxxers who, in his opinion, were causing people to die.
Right.
So I remember that interview with him that he got angry.
Well-
but a wonderful, lovely, brilliant man.
And an FOTM, lest we forget.
Who overcame extraordinary difficulty.
And he was very close with Ann Romer until his final moments. And Ann Romer visiting him in the hospital, she told me all about that. But they were very, very close. And David Onley, rest in peace, buddy. Okay, FOTM David Onley. Now, 3 more names. This gentleman, I'm recording with his daughter next week. Morty Shulman.
Oh, this is Marty Shulman. Again, all of these people from an age in CityTV where Moses encouraged us to be ourselves, where he hired people with character and with temperament, and he allowed us to be uninhibited. Morty is famous. He had an overweight woman, and he's interviewing her about her weight loss clinic, and he says to her, "You're fat!" and the other thing, Joan Schaefer was the producer of this. The Morty Shulman Show was a 90-minute show at 6 o'clock before City Pulse. Okay, and that's where I got my start reporting. Joan Schaefer had me doing horse racing tips, and every time Morty had to throw, he'd say, "These are so seedy. I don't like. I mean, who else would do that?" He said, "I have to run this racing tip with Peter Gross, but I don't want to. I think it's inappropriate."
Well, that man had his bona fides, right? He was a elected politician. He was a chief coroner. Fascinating individual, Morty Shulman. And his daughter, Diane Shulman, would become Diane Sachs, who is currently a city councillor.
But Morty Shulman, another one in this cast of characters. No one else like Morty Shulman.
All right, 2 more names here. Bill Cameron.
Oh, now I'm going to cry again.
I got Kleenex here if you need it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about Bill Cameron that I think I attended his funeral and I was almost weeping, and I don't cry too often about anything. There was we used to come on Monday nights, and we'd come on Monday nights. City Pulse at the time had the NFL games on Monday nights, so we'd come on at 11:30, 11:45. And I just thought, anyone watching is drunk and stoned. They'll put up with anything. There'd been a heavyweight fight. It wasn't heavyweight, a welterweight fight. I can't even remember the names of the fighters. And I couldn't get any video of it. So what I did is I got a paper bag and I drew the name of one fighter on the paper bag. And so I held it up and I said, okay, so imagine that this is so-and-so, and imagine my fist is the other one. And I started beating the crap out of the paper bag. The camera cuts to my side to Bill Cameron playing the stodgy too formal anchorman.
Right.
That's actually my
Is that anyone famous? No, that's your
mother.
mom. Okay. Your mom's famous.
Like doing this act of a person too important to be on with this idiot, and it was hilarious. It was so funny, and at the end of the show, he turned to me and he went, "That was great." So he understood television. He was, when I was on the show doing goofy, ridiculous stuff, he would be this almost play the stuffed shirt.
Right.
But he was a wonderful anchorman. He died, and imagine
He died far too young.
I imagine that, getting throat cancer, being a broadcaster and getting throat cancer.
So we lost Bill Cameron. I would watch him on CBC after his CityTV career. He was an anchor at CBC. And you want to get it? If it's your mom, you get it. Get it. That's important here. And I will just
Mother,
listen.
Yes?
I'm sorry I hung up on you. I'm right now in the middle of a podcast with Toronto Mike.
Almost done.
I'm going to call you in 15 minutes, okay?
Is Mom okay?
And now you're part of the podcast.
Okay.
Bye.
See, now I can call your mom an FOTM because she's been on the podcast.
There you go.
That's amazing. Okay, so Bill Cameron, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Last name, because I didn't want to close with somebody who you've attended the funeral of. This is a gentleman, you'll never attend his funeral. He'll live forever. But final thoughts for this episode. This was fantastic, by the way. Love seeing you. Can't wait to give you your lasagna, take the photo. Jim McKenney. Ever heard of him?
I'm trying to think if I've ever done anything.
Would you recognize Jim McKenney? He was a former Maple Leaf. I don't know if you knew this. Compared to Bobby Orr.
I don't know how he refers to me, but Jim McKenney is my best friend. Have you got half an hour? Have we got another half hour?
I would make it. I would drill a hole in my schedule for you to talk about Jim McKenney.
He was an absolute delight. When he was with the Leafs, he was such a character. He was, by the way, I believe Jim McKenney is still 5th all-time in defenseman scoring with the Maple Leafs. Something like 364 points. He was a great, great hockey player. He'll never tell you that.
Well, I think we talked about it because you brought him in and we had a great chat. But he was being compared to Bobby Orr when he was young, and that did him no favors.
Yeah, the story was it Tarasov, the Russian coach, was brought in to watch a Junior B game to see Bobby Orr. And after the game, they said, "What did you think about Bobby Orr?" And he said, "Bobby Orr, good hockey player. Jim McKenney, best guy on ice."
Yeah.
And Jim hated that. Jim hated being told he was terrific because then you have to be terrific again. He used to live next door to Moses. They would go on runs together. Moses said, "I'm going to give you to Peter Gross, and he will train you to be a sportscaster." And I love the guy. He was terrible at first. He was so stiff and unnatural. And we did a number of rehearsals after the show. So at 11 o'clock, after the City Pulse at 10 show, we would bring Jim into the studio with the teleprompter. And I had difficulty getting him to be natural and to be warm. And so what I would do, too bad there's no video of this because it's probably insane. As he was reading, I would stand behind the camera and act out the guy throwing the football or hitting the baseball or sliding into first. And it made him laugh. And he subsequently became a very, very fine and long-term anchor and greatly loved on City Pulse. And, of course, my experience with Jim is the 26 or 27 trips to Saratoga that we've got. I'll tell you another story. He bets a pick 3. The pick 3 is where you try and pick 3 winners in a row.
Okay.
And he hits the first winner. The jockey is Cornelio Velasquez, and I still remember him. He's screaming down the stretch, "Go, Corny, go! Go, Corny!" The horse pays $95. So, like, almost everyone's wiped out of the pool. The next race, he bets Cornelio Velasquez again, and Cornelio Velasquez wins, and it's a $60 horse.
Okay.
So now he's live on 3 outrageous pick 3s. One's paying $16,000, one's paying $10,000, one's paying $8,000, and he's got all 3.
Yeah.
And as they're coming down the stretch, we can see that the horse that's going to pay $10,000, we're sitting mid-stretch, and you can see this is where the race really develops. You can see that this particular horse is slowly but surely going to the lead and going to win the race. He wins $10,000. Mind you, the track held on to like 3,000 because of the take. We're at the track, Jim, me, and the late Clint Nickerson. That night in the hotel room, Jim takes thousands of dollars, throws it on the bed and says, "Help yourselves, guys."
Wow.
And covered all of our bets the next day.
Wow, that's a true friend. No wonder he's your best friend.
Yeah, that's Jim McKenney. Oh, everyone's calling.
That's Fred Patterson again. I got to call him. But is there anyone I didn't name that you wish I had? Just as their name for next time.
I really wanted to mention Bill Atanasoff.
Oh yeah, please. Please.
we went to Bill's 71st or 72nd birthday 2 weeks ago. Bill Atanasoff was the finest sports cameraman ever. And Jim McKenney and I loved to work with him. God, he could shoot sports. And about 10 years ago, and he was a workaholic. He loved to save money, like to pay off his house. Late one night, he gets a call to cover some police incident. And in fact, the reason there was an ambulance at the scene is the perpetrator, the guy the police were looking for, had jumped and committed suicide. Bill sets up in the middle of the street. He's got the camera on his shoulder. A guy driving a limousine at 40 miles an hour runs him down. He smashes into the face first, into the windshield, breaks his neck, breaks his back. One of his legs is so badly mangled they have to remove it. Becomes a quadriplegic, blind. And for 10 years, he's in this special apartment. He has 24-hour care. So that's the dreadful story. The uplifting part is that when we go to visit him, it's as if nothing happened to him. He is so upbeat and funny and laughing, and not once in 10 years has Bill Atanasoff ever said, "Why me? Why'd this have to happen?" He totally accepts it, and it's a delight to visit him and see how he's handling the worst possible thing that could happen to a human being.
I'm glad you shared that story. I've seen photos from these, I guess it's his birthday party, or
yeah, we go to his birthday party.
Like, I've seen those photos, and I see, there's Lauren Honickman, and there's Jojo Shinto, there's Gord Martineau, of course, there's Peter Gross. It's just great that you guys are still tight, and that's a great story you shared. So thanks for this, Peter. I loved it very much. And the word association was gangbusters. We'll see if Leona Boyd
like that. That was a good idea.
Thank you.
I don't know Leona Boyd. I have nothing to say about her.
Well, I'm going to ask her. You'll be one of the names when I do name association, just to see if she knows you. See you. Everyone, subscribe to Down the Stretch, the definitive Ontario horse racing podcast. Peter Gross kicks ass, takes names. Just ask Freddie P, who I got a call in 2 minutes. And that brings us to the end of our 1,537th show. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm at Toronto Mike. Go to torontomike.com for more. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, got your lasagna, recyclemyelectronics.ca, the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, you got your history book, and Ridley Funeral Home. I'm recording. This is an episode. Somebody told me this episode would never happen. I'm going to my calendar to tell you, because this is very niche. I doubt you'll know who I'm talking about. But I'm going to do a deep dive with a gentleman named Blair Richard Martin. And Blair Richard Martin was in a band called... Do you know the name of this band?
Not at all.
You don't know the name of the...
Battered Newsman.
That's actually not a bad guess at all. But here, let me stand by, because I don't... The Raving Mojos is what I want to say. The Raving Mojos. Let's see if I have that name right. This is a band that has come up a few times on Toronto Mike. For people a little older than me, a little younger than you, they speak about the Raving Mojos as their favorite band of all time. And I know nothing about the Raving Mojos. I miss them completely. I know there's a Jitters connection with Blair Packham, but Blair and many others said, he's never going to do your show. I'm going to make it happen. It's happening... What day did I say? Tuesday? Tomorrow? Is it happening tomorrow? It's happening Wednesday. Tune in for that. And then Thursday night at 8 o'clock, live at live.torontomike.com, is a super secret, exciting episode. I can't say anything more about that, or I'll have to kill every one of you. Peace and love. See you all Wednesday.